I'm going to show you how to paint this delicate, beautiful, translucent flower in super easy and accessible steps. Let's get started. Today, I'm using a piece of Strathmore pre-cut 5x7-inch cold pressed paper. I taped it to my table using simple washi tape I bought on Amazon. For my paints, I'm using Daniel Smith watercolors. I work from a limited palette, which means I start with the primary colors, but a warm and cool version of each, so 6 in all, and I mix everything myself. These are what my palettes look like. I basically keep adding on to colors I already have for new paintings, and I really love how it seems to make the hues deep and layered, since they literally are layers of mixings that have lasted weeks and weeks. I'm using my Transon brand brushes, a number 10 for my splatter, a number 6 for the flower, and then this one, which is called a 2-aught for my tiny details. Any small, thin, fine liner brush will work. I used 2 main colors for this piece, with the addition of some metallic details at the end. I'm going to start with those 2 colors and just lay down a bit of splatter with my number 10 brush. I don't want it to be too heavy or overbearing, so I'm keeping it light. I also tried to concentrate my pink petal-colored splatter at the top of the page and the green leaf-colored at the bottom. Obviously it wasn't perfect, and that's totally okay, but I just wanted to give the vague impression of that separation. Then I went in with a paper towel and just gently dabbed at the paint. This can help gently disrupt some of those paint drops so that they're less round and have more interesting shapes and dry lines, and it can also make it a bit lighter as it soaks up some of the pigment, which is perfect here since I want the whole piece to feel kind of airy and ethereal. I'm not waiting for the splatter to dry, I'm just going to go right in and start on my flowers. I did sketch them out on my paper first, and each one has 4 petals. I'm going to pick any 2 and paint those for my first layer. Now there are different methods for achieving that translucent effect, but this is the one that I have the most success with. I'm going to start just by painting the petal. I'm going to make sure my petal is super wet. You'll see that I even added some plain water as I was painting. I don't want them to be too saturated with pigment that may stain the paper, and I don't want it to start drying into the paper. I want just a really lightish color that's very wet. For this particular flower, you'll see that one side was darker than the other, so I kind of pushed the paint around until they were more even. Next, I'm going to take my brush and dry it on a paper towel I'm holding in my lap, and I'm going to use it to soak up some of that diluted pigment in the center of my petals. I'm going to do this to both sides. Now that the petals are no longer so saturated, and the middle of the petals are a bit lighter, I'm going to fill my brush with water and drop it into my petal. What this is going to do is push the pigment that's there away from itself, and it will be forced to the outside line of these petals. This will create a translucent effect. This technique does take a bit of practice, and at least for me, there is usually a bit of back and forth. Sometimes after you do these steps, there's still too much color in the center of the petal, in which case I will again use a dry brush to absorb some of the liquid and drop more clear water into the petal. Other times, perhaps, by the time I have taken away some of the paint and added water, my color is too light, in which case I may add more pigment to the outside edge of the flower, often continuing to repeat these steps a few times until I have achieved the look that I want. Now I'm going to start on my next flower, once again filling in 2 petals with light pink paint, removing some from the middle, and then carefully adding in drops of water. In this one, you can really see how it pushes the paint away from itself and to the perimeter of the petals. I still felt like there was too much pigment, however, so I repeated the drying step and added more water. This time getting cleaner lines and more distinction between the white middle and the pink outline. I'm going to do the last one in the same manner. Once those are dry, I have these petals that are so delicately and vaguely pink in the center with a lovely dark border. Then I can go in and add my other petals. I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did before, painting the petal, drying some of the paint in the middle, and adding drops of water until it looks the way I want it. Then, when those petals aren't quite so wet, but before they are completely dry, I'm going to take my green and begin to work on the stems. I want the green to ever so slightly begin to bleed into the flower, so I'm working while the petals are still damp, but I need to make sure that the green doesn't spread very quickly and overtake the petal, which is why they can't be too wet. It's definitely a balance that gets better with practice. However, even if your green starts to bleed too far up or is too dark and pigmented, you can use the same technique as before and dry your brush and use it to gently soak up some of the paint. Or, like I did here, use the corner of a paper towel. In this way, watercolor can be very forgiving. Now I'm going to add my stems. Just a quick note, your flower game will instantly improve if you have long, thin, wispy stems and not thick, clunky ones. It took me forever to figure that out. Then I added a few little leaves. And some finishing touches on the stem. When that was dry, I went in to add some detail to the leaves with the same green. Then I added some very thin, very faint detail lines to my flower. I used some of my metallic paints for this step just because I absolutely adore that little touch of sparkle and shine, but you could also just use the same pink as you used to paint the petals. As you can see, I'm going very slowly and making sure that these details are light and subtle. I certainly don't want them to be stark and distracting and overpower my delicate petals. And then I'm done. Less is more when it comes to a piece like this. Minimal splatter, light, muted colors, and tiny details create a piece that is airy and ethereal. Here's an up close to some of my favorite little details. You can see how the green of the stem has blended beautifully with the very bottom of this petal, how you get that delightful overlap through the transparency of the petals, and how the borders of the petals have a gorgeous dry line. The leaves have those light lines in them, plus you can see some of the splatter through the actual design. It's not overbearing, but adds just a little bit of dimension and interest that I think is really wonderful. This little flower portrait is simple but stunning, with dainty petals and highlighting some of the beautiful attributes of watercolor with the lines and splatter. I hope you enjoy painting yours as much as I enjoyed painting mine. Thanks for watching. Bye!